I'm Hugh. It's election day. Get out there and vote if you haven't already. 78 million Americans have voted. Byron York joins me, Fox News contributor and Washington Examiner columnist extraordinaire. You can follow him on X at Byron York. Good morning, Byron. Where are you this morning inside the Beltway?
Good morning, Hugh. I am in Palm Beach, Florida, where
Oh, my goodness.
President Trump will have his event tonight, whatever it is, and I will hopefully be there to cover it.
So, Byron, I would like, you are a reporter as well as having opinions every now and then. What do you think about this election, its major stories, and its data points that the audience ought to know about as Election Day dawns?
Well, I mean, the thing to remember that we began talking this way, and it's still true, and this is an entirely historic election in the sense that one of the candidates has been president of the United States before, and that changed everything. And the second thing about it is it's the second election in a row, presidential election, in which Democrats wanted to and tried to and did change established practices or laws or other ways of running an election. This one they did a real doozy, which is to withdraw their candidate on July 21st and come up with an entirely new candidate for the final 3 months of the campaign. So this is an extraordinarily different election from anything anybody in living memory has experienced.
I agree. There's also a new set of facts, which is the early voting is 78 million. And there's a lot of facts within that. Vibes are simply projections of opinions dressed up as facts, right? Vibes don't exist. There are facts. 78 million people have voted. Republicans have done overwhelmingly better than I've ever seen them do in that. And turnout in major centers, like I was just looking at the Cuyahoga County numbers, but Detroit and Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, those machines are down 20, 25%. Those are Democrat strongholds. What do these facts tell you as opposed to this idiocy about vibes? I've really had it with vibes, Byron, as you might be able to tell.
Well, the facts say that Republicans have embraced early voting in a way that they certainly didn't before, because I think one of the biggest tactical mistakes that Donald Trump made in 2020 was to discourage early and mail-in voting among his supporters, which meant that he bet everything on turnout on Election Day, while Democrats had every single day banked millions of votes before Election Day. So Trump figured that out and did not discourage early voting this time. And I did have one political professional say, well, yeah, it's going better because Trump isn't telling people not to vote this time. So there is, though, the question of cannibalization, which is, that is, if members of your party, your own supporters, vote early when they would have voted on Election Day, there's really no difference except you'll get fewer votes on Election Day. I'm not sure that's the case here because of what are called low propensity voters who appear to be turning out for Trump. Plus, I do believe that especially the women voters who are really, really anti-Trump, I believe they're very inclined to vote early. So if there is cannibalization going on, it may be occurring on the Democratic side. But could I say one more thing about early voting?
Yes, please.
Well, a lot of people like me think it's a bad idea. I think Election Day should be Election Day. But that's not the way it works now. But one of the arguments for Election Day being Election Day is that voters get to see the entire campaign and take into account all of the events that happen up to Election Day, and then they make a decision. Now, you've probably been seeing in the last few days, Democrats have been absolutely giddy about the last few days of the campaign. They think Harris has closed just flawlessly, and they believe Trump has blown his lead in the last few minutes of the game. And they point to a number of Trump, quote, mistakes, meaning the Madison Square Garden rally on October 27th, his statement on October 30th that he's going to protect women whether they like it or not, and this, quote, firing squad thing about Liz Cheney on October 31. I went back and looked at the early voting. And by the time Trump took the stage at Madison Square Garden, 44 million people had already voted. By the time he said he was going to protect women whether they like it or not, 55 million people had already voted. And just the very next day, when he talked about the Liz Cheney, quote, firing squad, more than 60 million people had already voted. it doesn't matter what Trump said to them because they never knew about it before their vote. We could
Excellent point.
have.
I'll point out as well that the corrections to the context in each of those circumstances and the Joe Biden garbage comment and
Right.
the garbage truck, again, many people have nothing that I voted before all that happened. The late breaking news, because we are in a 20-minute news cycle, and I would like your assessment of this on election morning, Byron York, for the 70 million people who are still going to vote today, are Joe Rogan, Megyn Kelly, and Peanut the Squirrel.
Yes. Yes. Well, obviously, Rogan's endorsement. I wonder why people endorse at the very last second, because it really does take time to get out there. But these are actually positive things for Trump, and the whole peanut the squirrel thing is really quite extraordinary. But it's amazing how many sort of Democrats have associated peanut with MAGA, and therefore they're not disturbed by what happened. So what can I say about these final, sort of trivial moments in the end of the campaign? They do seem to be helping Trump.
I do think the peanut execution, euthanasia, whatever the word is, 12 people went to Mr. Longo's home from the Department of Environmental Concerns or whatever they call it and the county. And I just think for a lot of people, this is the sort of story, organic as it is. I mean, it develops on social media. It's not covered. It's not pushed by legacy media, which is just broken badly beyond repair. And I just think that the peanut story gathers in so many people's as broken as the New York Department of Environmental Conservation is, it's as badly broken as the border and as our intelligence system, as our deterrence. It kind of comes together as a piece. Now, I don't want to go into vibe land, but it's a real deal for people.
I think you're going into vibe land on it, as a matter of fact.
Good morning.
Clearly, the overkill and the abuse of official agencies and official power. I mean, they got warrants to enter this man's house to kill the squirrel. And it just seems extraordinary. Plus, the nationalization of this kind of thing, that Peanut was fingered by a woman in Texas who had been looking at this on Instagram. I mean, this wasn't even a neighbor who was concerned about a wild animal in the house next to her or something like that. So I agree to you. I agree with you that it makes pro-Republican points here, but I do think that is vibe-landed.
I would like to know why they didn't call him. The story to me, I've been dealing with endangered species since I got out of the government in the Reagan years in 1989, and with environmental agencies. I've retired from the active practice of law now. Yeah, agencies can call people up and talk about issues. They don't have to do a raid for 5 hours with 12 people. I'm just so astonished by our government. Byron, I want to get some predictions from you on the Senate, the House, and the presidency, and we'll go into the break if we have to, but let's start with the presidency. Do you have a prediction whether Donald Trump will win electoral college? And by the way, the popular vote does not matter to me in the least. The constitutional majority is the electoral college. What do you think, Byron York?
Well, I do not have a prediction, but I will say, as we speak, the Real Clear Politics average of polls nationally of the popular vote is literally tied, 48.5 to 48.5. And in the past, and all the way up till now, most people have believed because of the Electoral College advantage, a tie means Trump wins.
That is my understanding as well. And I do believe that there are some obvious things out there like Nevada and Arizona. Do you want to opine on those two states?
What do you mean with the...
which way they're going in the presidential?
Well, the early voting in Nevada has been quite interesting. And you've talked about what John Ralston has been writing. He made his final prediction and predicted that Harris would win by 0.3%.
It's an absurd thing. I unfollowed John. I just unfollowed him. It's absurd.
Which was kind of amazing. But I mean, basically his conclusion was it doesn't look good for Harris, but I think John Ralston, think the Reid machine, the Harry Reid machine, will just find the votes somewhere. And I think that's his conclusion. And maybe that's true in Nevada. I don't know.
But it's wish casting as a journalist.
It is wish casting.
And so I just said I can't trust him anymore, and so I stopped following him. Stay with me, Byron. Welcome back, America. Byron York is stuck with me because I wanted to go through the Senate and the House with him. Byron, I think Jim Justice is going to be Senator-elect Justice, and Tim Sheehy is going to be Senator-elect Sheehy in West Virginia and Montana, respectively. And then there are 9 more races. Dave McCormick in Pennsylvania, Bernie Moreno in Ohio. These are the Republican candidates. Mike Rogers in Michigan, Eric Hovde in Wisconsin, Terry Lake in Arizona, Sam Brown in Nevada, Larry Hogan in Maryland, Hung Cao in Virginia, and Nella Domenici in New Mexico. So what do you expect the Senate to look like in numbers? And then tell me any specifics you've got after that.
Well, I expect that Republicans will win control of the Senate. I mean, obviously, West Virginia is done, and I think Wyoming is done. So there's control.
Montana, right? You mean Montana?
I'm sorry, Montana. Montana is done. So, so I think that takes care of it right there. Of the other races, I think the Ohio thing is really striking. I mean, that's an extremely close race between Brown and Moreno, and I got to say it's not looking that great for him. It's
for who?
It's not looking that great for Sherrod Brown.
Exactly. He's just too liberal for Ohio. He just the numbers, the early vote, Cuyahoga County being down. Bernie's a great candidate. He's run through the tape. I feel like he's going to win, but I also think Dave McCormick has run practically. Well, actually, maybe the most flawless Senate race I've ever seen.
Yeah, and Bob Casey's race it just has the smell of fear about it, which is Bob Casey's coming at it every moment and said, "I stood with Donald Trump," and you think, wow, that is not a confident Democratic candidate there. So I think that's possibly a real problem, and most important, also, I think Republicans are not going to lose any seats. So these are all gains. So I think you're talking at least 51, which means Republican control of the Senate, regardless of who controls the White House.
And so I'm going to go. I think that I just always split the difference. They got to have at least 53 at the end of the night, unless I've just misjudged everything, which is possible, very possible. How about the House? Because I had Speaker McCarthy on yesterday. Upbeat Kevin McCarthy is still upbeat about our friend Derek Van Orden, about Juan Ciscomani, about Mike Lawler. I mean, he knows the map like nobody knows the map. What do you think, Byron York?
I tend to go with Kevin McCarthy on these things. I think you and I have discussed this on the air before. He's the world's most organized man. And he knew, as Speaker of the House, and when he was in lower positions before that, he knew the entire Republican caucus. He knew them all. He knew their families. He knew how much money the committees had given them. He knew where their strong points were, where their weak points, what their votes were, and all of that. So I think if you look at the Real Clear Politics average of polls now, you see an advantage for Republicans right now with 201 seats right now, 109 for Democrats, 39 in the middle somewhere. And I think you're going to end up with Speaker Johnson.
Now, I want to close on this. I think Byron is among the most responsible reporters in the business. We don't know anything, Byron. I will not be surprised by anything tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
You agree with that?
Yeah, I think maybe it was yesterday I did my newsletter. I mean, the frightening thing about this is that we are all of our talk, all of it is based on our readings of polls that may not be accurate. We may be standing on the 17th floor of a house of cards, and the wind is coming up by this evening. And so I don't really know what to say here, other than I wouldn't bet my house on any of this stuff.
Well put. Byron York, thank you. Follow him on X at Byron York. Watch him tonight on Fox News. Read his stuff in the Washington Examiner. Thank you, Byron.
Thank you, Hugh.